Wir wollen dann gleich anfangen. Heute Vormittag sind ja verschiedene Panels da, aber zuvor, Utter, wie machen wir das mit der Übersetzung? Du bist hier im Panel 1. Ja. Wollt ihr das nachher noch klären, wenn wir unter sich sind? Machen wir das so, okay. Dann wollte ich mal kurz abfragen zu den verschiedenen Panels beziehungsweise Räumen. Wir haben hier im Hörsaal 1 das Panel eben. Dann haben wir... Bitte? Oh, okay. Dann nehmen wir das mal weg. Eingeschaltet gewesen. Okay, weil ich glaube, man versteht mich so ganz gut. Jetzt brauche ich noch meine Liste. Wo habe ich sie? Ja, die von den Räumen jetzt, weil die habe ich jetzt nicht im Kopf. Sie lag da. Da muss ich. Das ist sie nicht.
Thomas Friedrichs.
Dann, bitte?
Thomas Friedrichs, 3. Stock.
Thomas Friedrich ist im 3. Stock.
Hörsaal 3.
Im Hörsaal 3.
3. Stock. Im
3. Stock, im grünen Bereich. Genau. Dann haben wir, was haben wir noch?
Hier ist das Lottocracy.
Hier ist das Lottocracy Panel.
Mit Utter.
Genau. Dann, Dankeschön. Dann Deep Democracy fällt leider aus. Ja, die Maria hat abgesagt leider, die kann nicht. Die Trias des politischen Kampfes. In welchem Raum ist die?
Hörsaal 8, glaube ich.
Hörsaal 8. Ich habe sie aufgeschrieben auf meiner Liste, aber die hängen nicht da.
Uwe, bist du nicht im Hörsaal 8?
Na, Uwe ist im Hörsaal 8, genau. Uwe ist im Hörsaal 8, genau.
Du, Thomas, aber es steht nicht draußen.
Es steht draußen.
Er steht draußen, alles
Am Plakat.
Okay, ich muss aber wissen, wie viele Leute wohin gehen, damit wir eventuell noch Zuordnungen machen können. Also wer möchte denn beim Panel zuhören zu Lottocracy?
Das findet hier statt.
Bitte Hände hoch. Ja, genau, genug. Wer möchte zur Trias des politischen Kampfes? 1, 2, 3. Okay. Wer möchte denn zu Thomas Friedrich? Auch genug. Wer geht zu Uwe? Okay, wunderbar. Oliver, guten Morgen. Dann würde ich euch bitten, in die entsprechenden Räume zu gehen. Die draußen stehen, ja, ich habe sie eingetragen. Also nicht nur die Sonne.
Is this the microphone?
Je nachdem. This is for the live stream, this is for the Zoom. So it's complicated.
I don't have a very loud voice. So.
No, it's okay.
It's okay.
It's okay. Uta is moderating?
Yes, she's just. She
Yeah,
will come
yeah.
soon. Very soon. Here she is. Then we are speaking about it.
Schau mal, dass wir so ein Bild sind, dass niemand abgeschnitten ist.
Yeah, I'm in the middle.
So, super.
But you have to find your.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I only want to show you something. First.
Me?
No. Oh.
All of us.
Anna Rosenberg,
Ja.
das sind 3.
Ja.
Anna Rosenberg, Gerhard Wittgenschmark und...
Ist das die Trias? Das Politische?
Genau, das sind die 3, die das machen. Ich hoffe, die sind da.
Ja, die oben, die sind schon oben.
Also ist alles klar, gut.
Haben sich da Leute dafür interessiert?
Ich bin drin. Also hier, du kannst einfach das wählen und filmen.
Okay.
So, I don't know, Pedro, do you hear us? Pedro? Okay.
Yeah.
Can you see the screen which I'm showing now from Bürgerrat, from the mini publics across the world from the 1970s until today? You see until 2019, the mini-publics or citizen assemblies or Lottocracies around the world have been growing very much. You see, especially in Europe, of course, Northern America, but as well all over the world. So I wanted to show you this. You can find this on Bürgerrat.de. It's a German homepage, and I only wanted to show you this first. And now I'll go back to the screen where we can. I go here. Yeah, please, for the translation. You tell something, okay?
Okay, ganz kurz, also es gibt Übersetzung ins Deutsche und ins Englische, also wenn jemand weder die eine oder eine von den beiden Sprachen nicht versteht, dann liegen da so Geräte, bitte sich gerne eines davon holen. Und auch online, für jene, die online sind, gibt es auch Dolmetschung, da muss man einfach den Kanal aussuchen. And yeah, now one more time in English for everybody who doesn't speak German or English. Please take one of these devices for translation, and also there's translation available online. Great, that's all.
Yes, and for Pedro, Pedro is in Zoom. How can he have?
He should be able to. Down here, there's a little globe that says Dolmetschen or interpreting on the English screen probably, and he needs to click on that, and then it should be fine. Yeah. Okay. Danke.
Okay, wonderful. So, good morning. I'm very glad that you're here. You have to apologize my very poor English, but anyway, I'm doing somehow. Perhaps sometimes I change to German, and I'm very glad that we can talk about citizen assemblies, we can talk about Lottocracy, we can talk about rotation, we can talk about a lot of renewal, novellation for democracy. So we should talk how can we strengthen democracy and what are our proposals to do this. I'm very glad here to have our three speakers. First, Jason from Great Britain. Please, Jason, can you? We will do this following first Jason. Then we will have Pedro from University Potsdam. Then we will have Heide Hammer from Vienna, and then we will have Sabine from Brno. And she will also talk about her activist experiences within the People's Platform as well. Yesterday we had Knox from the People's Platform, if you remember, in the queer feminist panel, and she told us something about it. So please, could you introduce yourself first, Jason, please?
Hello everyone, my name is Jason Chrysostomou. I'm an activist living in London, UK. I'm actually a member of a post-capitalist research group, along with Thomas Stollner, the organisers of the conference.
Sorry, there's a big echo.
Yeah.
A really big echo.
It's a bit irritating.
Can you turn off the mic for the room? So we hear you, but not then again you through the mic.
I did off the micros, they are off.
But we need some microphone for the Zoom, doesn't it?
We need a microphone. The problem, if you put this off, Thomas, Pedro doesn't hear us.
he must hear us via Zoom, via this microphone.
Okay.
So I can turn that
And
off.
can we hear?
If he talks, I turn him on.
Okay.
So is it better now? I think so.
Yes, yes it is.
Yeah.
Is this
It
better
was
now?
that way.
No, it's not better.
It's not better. Okay.
No?
Guys, the problem is that the sound comes back from the Zoom conference. So then this is delayed and makes it that echo effect. But this is nothing which we can fix right now because the guys in the Zoom conference need to hear your voice and they need also the possibility to speak up.
So we cannot do anything. Perhaps. Is it easier if you come closer to us? Is it easier then? So please come closer, and perhaps then the echo is not so hard. No.
No, it's bad here too. I think what we hear is you talking here and then the Zoom conference talking, relaying what you said 1 second before.
Yes.
So maybe
but
we can
then everybody mutes
turn
his
off
computer.
Zoom sound for us as long as nobody remote is talking. And when remote people are talking, we turn it on, but then we do not talk here in the room.
Yes, yes.
Okay?
Yes.
So now everybody should mute his computer in here.
Is this muted, the computer?
No. When I'm muted, there is
Then
no
Thomas.
recording.
There's no. Okay, this is not possible then.
No, I don't think we should not record it or not send out the sound from the room to the other people online. What I say is we should mute the speakers here, the loudspeakers.
The loudspeakers, yeah.
As long as we do not need them
Yes.
for people in the room talking.
Yes.
Right, is that better? No.
You hear that it comes.
It's from these speakers, isn't it?
Yeah.
I press the mute button. And it's red light right now. So it should be off.
So, try again.
Right. No, the echo is still here, isn't it?
Maybe there's some mics on. If you don't have mics on, it can't be.
No, the mic's on. This one is.
And this one we need.
Well, the mics can stay on. The speakers.
Yeah, but I
Maybe
turned
check
them
the
off.
PA system is separate. There's red and there's white speaker. Maybe check if the sound system is like separate controls.
Ja, Peter, stimmt schon, aber es kann auch kein Ton rauskommen, wenn keiner reinkommt. Also wenn du
Ja, aber dann
beides.
ist wieder Heimdings.
Ja. Jetzt habe ich auch mal
Yeah.
Ja.
I love it when everything works.
Das ist schon komisch.
Und immer sprechen?
Sag mal was.
What about now?
Ja. Hast du gemutet oder gemutet?
Ja.
Ne?
Also,
Nein.
nein. Ich habe nur das gedrückt. Das ist alles gut.
Okay.
Du kannst es so lassen. Ich habe nichts verändert in Zoom.
Okay,
Nein.
aber wenn ich jetzt auch mal ausprobieren. Jason, once again, please.
Hello? Is there
Jetzt ist
any-
better. Yeah, it's
Okay,
better.
well done.
Let's go.
Die Frage, ob die jetzt noch im Zoom was hören.
Thomas,
No, that's not my picture. That's strange. Also wie
Shall I
kommt der
continue?
Ton auf die
Yes,
Lautsprecheranlage?
please.
Okay, so as well as doing work around the vision for post-capitalism called a participatory economy, my background is in working in digital technology and worker cooperatives in the UK. But most important, the echo's back. Thomas, the echo's back again.
Yeah, I turned it off again. It was just a check, sorry.
Oh, okay. But I was an activist, a climate activist with Extinction Rebellion in the UK for about 5 years, and that's mostly what I'm going to talk about. And Extinction Rebellion's demand for a citizens' assembly on the climate and ecological emergency.
My name's Sabine. I'm an engineer and I'm doing my master's in electrical power engineering, which is a mix of electrical engineering and classical energetics. But like beyond that, I've been in the climate movement from the Balkans since, well, 2016, 2017, right around high school. And my experience mostly centers on not just the strong engineering background, but also like looking at how the emerging climate crisis will not be solved by selling a product, where we have to fundamentally rethink almost every single aspect that engineers are taught, like in engineering, where you, for example, learn about the Rankine cycle or like classic coal thermal power plants, right? And I came into engineering like with a very radical background, and like as I'm kind of studying it, I'm kind of playing around with a lot of the different concepts that are emerging in a lot of the social movements, basically. And I was one of the co-organizers of the technology panel in the People's Platform, which came as a very kind of spontaneous, chaotic event, which I really liked, because what happened was like there's 800, 900 people, and some of us were in this like engineering hackerspace social scene movement, and we just said, okay, instead of going to these other panels, let's make our own panel, and it went great.
Stop, please. Now they can't hear anything because the mic is off.
Yeah.
The best thing would be to turn off the speakers, as you said, but I did it, so I don't know why it does not work. Vielleicht auf dem, genau auf dem, was wir sagen. Sorry, excuse me.
So
yesterday it worked, so.
It's sometimes tough video as well.
Sabine, could you say something loud for?
Hello, testing? Yeah. Can you guys hear me? Yeah, perfect, perfect.
We don't know what we have done.
Oh.
It works.
Just
magic.
press some buttons and sometimes it helps. Okay.
So should we repeat the small introduction?
Does Pedro hear us now?
I can hear you now. I can hear now.
Yes,
Sagt er.
you? Okay, and okay. So we don't see him, so perhaps he can...
He can see. He wrote to me because
Yes,
I'm in a chat.
He also should introduce himself.
Yeah. When?
After Heidi.
Okay. Okay.
Hallo und guten Morgen. Mein Name ist Heide Hammer. Es kratzt ein bisschen im Hals seit dieser kühlen Tag am Freitag, aber ich glaube, mit ein bisschen Hagebuttentee werde ich das gut hinkriegen. Ich beschäftige mich schon sehr lang mit sowas wie Lohnarbeitsbashing, und die Arbeitszeitverkürzung ist mir sowohl auf persönlicher Ebene als auch in meinen politischen Bemühungen schon lange ein großes Anliegen, und deswegen habe ich auch vor, das heute sozusagen als Voraussetzung dafür, für verschiedene Entscheidungsmodelle, aber auch für politische Partizipation, Aktivismus und einfach ein besseres Leben für uns alle, das ein bisschen auszuführen.
Now, Pedro, please.
He just wrote to get some coffee.
Okay, then until Pedro is here.
He's back again.
He's back again. Pedro, your introduction, please. Your self-introduction.
A little bit.
We cannot hear.
Bit.
Jetzt weiß ich auch. Das kann man natürlich auch verändern. Oder über welchen Lautsprecher hast du ihn denn eingeschaltet?
Yes.
Ja.
My name is Josef, and I'm dealing with Lottocracy and egalitarian practices around the world during a long time, coming from philosophy and gender studies. And of course, I remind you to the work of David Graeber, who worked out that we have a lot of egalitarian practices around the world, like rotation, carnival, like moving around and changing our organizations during the year. So he speaks of three kinds of freedom. The first freedom is to come and to go, which is very, very important. The second freedom is not to obey. He tells us that our modern societies, especially in the working, in the labor area, we have to obey, to be there. And this second freedom of not to obey is very, very important for a free society. And the third freedom, of which David Graeber and David Van Groff are talking in their wonderful book, is to be free to found new kinds of organizations and societies, to be creative and to find new rules, new practices, which are able to have lower violence, lower dominance, and lower also war. And therefore today we talk about these different egalitarian practices, and one of these egalitarian practices is our kind of democracy, which tries to have a rotation of power. Of course, we have the big problem with election. As you all know, there are a lot of critics of elections, that they are more aristocratic than democratic, because the most beautiful and most loud and most intelligent and most sophisticated people, they get elected, and the people who are not so loud and not so beautiful and not so wealthy and are not so able to argument, they don't get elected. So there are a lot of different proposals to change these kind of democracies all over the world and to widen them, for example. And one example is that one next step in this kind of transformation we're talking about, there's a proposal of Hubertus Buchstein in Germany, but also in the English-speaking countries from Equality by Lot. This is a big community of academics. I'm sorry to say this, but most of them are academics. They propose that we install a fourth part within Parliament, which is chosen per lot. Yeah? So that we can have a lot of people, citizens of Europe, for example, and they are chosen per lot, and they come into the fourth part of the Parliament, in addition to the party members. So of course this is one first step within this long way of transformation. Of course a lot of people are much more radical. They would say, okay, whole the Parliament should be chosen by Lottocracy. At the beginning of the European Parliament we had a big new movement with IT specialists from France, and he tried to put this to make the European Parliament not through parties, but through this chosen per lot citizens from all over Europe. Yeah. So I want to beg you that you tell us something about your proposals concerning challenges that of our democracies, of our egalitarian practices, and Jason, you tell us something perhaps about your citizen assemblies within your movements, and what are your experiences with them? What are the challenges? What is good with it? What is not so good with it? Yes, please, you have the word.
Okay. Well, I was planning to talk about three things. First of all, the Citizens' Assembly that Extinction Rebellion demanded. But then I also want to talk about the context we're in today, the situation we're facing in 2025, the implications of social collapse and political revolution in the face of rising authoritarianism and Earth systems breakdown. And then finally, I wanted to then talk about the new, quite exciting assembly democracy projects that are emerging in the UK. Is that all right? Yeah? 20 minutes? Okay, yeah. I'll cut some things out. I'll also make a list of some websites and books that I think are useful to look at for further information if you want to note them down. And if you want to note any questions down as well, we're going to have time for discussions at the end. So Extinction Rebellion was a movement that started in 2018, and it took inspiration from successful historical campaigns such as the movement for Indian independence, the British suffragettes, and the American Civil Rights Movement. And the strategy has been to use non-violent civil disobedience to pressure the government into taking action on the climate and ecological crises. So let's talk about Extinction Rebellion's main demand. Why make this demand for a citizens' assembly? Because governments are not going to take the action necessary, right, for the climate and ecological emergency. We all know that electoral politics was engineered centuries ago as a means to provide a very superficial conception of democracy while maintaining control by the ruling classes. And our political parties are required by design to focus on short-term 5-year election cycles over the solutions to complex longer-term problems. And they're easily captured by powerful corporations, lobby groups, and wealthy individuals. So the demand for a citizens' assembly is to enable ordinary people to come together, give them time and information, and come up with a solution of a plan for how we transition from here to a decarbonized society. Could you raise your hand if you're already familiar with what a citizens' assembly is? Okay. So a citizens' assembly is a body of citizens, typically between 50 and 150 people, selected through a civic lottery we call it sortition, this process. And the idea is this body is demographically representative of the wider population in terms of age, gender, ethnicity, geography, so on. So it's a cross-section of the public where everyday people come together, right? Not experts, not politicians. And there are normally 3 stages. The first is learning. They spend several weekends hearing from a balanced range of experts and other stakeholders. Secondly, they deliberate, which is very important. They discuss this evidence in small breakout groups, typically around 7 people. They weigh up the pros and cons of different options, and the third process is they make decisions. So these recommendations are based on informed collective judgment. And the evidence is very clear that when a diverse group of people get together, they have time, access to information, they listen to each other, they deliberate, they come up with much better decisions. And the process itself is also very valuable in a democracy for people to participate in decision making. So these citizens' assemblies have already been used in many places around the world to address all kinds of issues that electoral politics can't fix. One good example is in Ireland. They had a citizens' assembly there that broke the deadlock on the issues of same-sex marriage and abortion. Okay, so going back to the UK, although the UK Parliament declared a climate emergency in response to mass direct actions in London in May 2019, they even held a climate assembly in 2020. However, it received very little public attention. The recommendations were advisory and were basically ignored. So, fast forward to 2025. The climate movement in the UK is, I'm sad to say, it's virtually dead. While Extinction Rebellion still exists, it's very limited. Just Stop Oil has stopped its actions. And this is largely because of state repression. New laws enacted means that civil disobedience now results in lengthy prison sentences. So climate activists have been sentenced to 4 years in prison for just attending a Zoom meeting that was planning an action. So that's the longest sentence in history for peaceful civil disobedience. It's an automatic 1-year prison sentence now if you lock on to public infrastructure, like glue yourself to something. Okay, that's where we are now. So many activists have realized that for anything to change, we need systemic changes, and they've switched their attention towards building this. And the second reason is that when Extinction Rebellion started in 2018, the goal to prevent 1.5 degrees of global heating was still achievable. In 2025, that's no longer the case. So if you ever hear anyone talking about 1.5 degrees, keeping global temperatures to below that, they're either lying or they're deluding themselves. The last 2 years have been above 1.5 degrees of heating. In his most recent work, the world's arguably most important climate scientist, James Hansen, if you're not familiar with him, I'd recommend looking at his work. Him and his colleagues have reassessed the Earth's climate sensitivity, and they're saying that the mainstream models have significantly underestimated the planet's sensitivity to greenhouse gases. Hansen has now warned us that this even long-standing international ambition to limit global heating to 2 degrees of global temperature, in his words, is now unreachable. And this threshold could be breached within the next 10 to 15 years. He attributes this to an acceleration of a number of factors, one being a reduction in anthropogenic aerosol pollution. This has a cooling, masking effect. I can go into more detail about that if you like in the discussion if you're interested, but I'm going to kind of skip this bit in the interest of time. But the point of all of this is to say, if Hansen is correct, we're heading towards a social collapse scenario in the next 10 to 15 years. So this is important for us to really understand and prepare. You know, this will manifest in extreme weather, crop failures, food inflation, mass displacement of people, and the breakdown of social, economic, and civil institutions. And historically, in times of crisis and uncertainty, it's common for populations to then turn towards authoritarianism. And we can already see that happening, right? In the UK, we had the largest far-right rally for years recently, where 100,000 people in London came to the streets. And we have a new right-wing party called Reform, who are almost certain to win the next election. So we really have two options now. One is this annihilation along with fascism, or the second option is managing this catastrophe we're in with this assembly democracy revolution. And I'm obviously here to argue for the second option. There's a new book out called Goliath's Curse by Luke Kemp, and he spent 5 years putting this book together. It's a history of social collapse. It's very interesting. So I recommend reading that. Okay, so what do we need to do, right? We don't just need another campaign or a regular left party with left policies. We need to start looking more about structural changes. And we can look at the assemblies, the first form of democracy which arose in ancient Mesopotamia and ancient Greece. And the idea is that citizens participate directly in decisions and they deliberate. So we need to replace electoral politics with a new political constitution that scales up direct assembly democracy into this confederated national structure via community and regional assemblies and national assemblies based on sortition. And this is going to mean big changes to our culture, and also for us learning the necessary skills to do this, right? We're all born in a society, we don't get to experience this stuff, right? We go to a hierarchical school system, we live in hierarchical families often, and then we join a hierarchical workplace. So, but I do believe that this century will be the century of assembly democracy, and it's going to define the human species. Yeah, some books about this I'd recommend. One is called Against Elections, The Case for Democracy by David Van Raybroek, and The Shortest History of Democracy by John Keane. Okay, on to the more positive news, okay? So there's some really interesting projects in the UK now which are advancing assembly democracy. Many of them have arisen from the climate movement. The first one is a group is called Assemble. And Assemble are building assemblies in community neighborhoods. In these community assemblies, people from the neighborhood, they come together, they talk through issues, and they come up with solutions in the form of a community charter. And this charter is a list of 5 things that you want to see changed that you can take to your local authority to demand change. The assembly is also a way for people to get to know their neighbours, build trust and take collective action. How many of us today actually know our neighbours? Maybe it's different here, but I can tell you in London, I don't know mine very well. Okay, how do these community assemblies work? When someone arrives, they are welcomed, they're offered some food, and the food is really important because it's a social aspect thing, this. So my credit to the organisers of this conference. I've really enjoyed the food here and the entertainment. It's been fantastic. The assembly is then introduced by a host, and the main part is people get into their breakout groups of between 5 to 8 people to discuss 2 questions. What are the problems in your area? And number 2, what are the solutions that you want to go into your charter? So then people get into their breakout groups and then come up with solutions which are then fed back together and narrowed down into 5 demands. How does Assemble do the outreach? How do you get people to come to the assemblies? Right? That's a big challenge. So they do this through engaging people in the community by building trust, listening and creating excitement around the assembly. The most effective methods that they found for outreach are doorstep surveys. So that's, you go around to your neighbourhood and you knock on people's doors, you ask them questions and you listen. And then you invite them to come along to the assembly. So I did lots of this with a project in XR, in Extinction Rebellion. And if you've never done door knocking, I would really highly encourage you to try it, because people are never listened to, and you should see, their faces change where you go there, knock on their door. You're not trying to sell them something. They're suspicious, but then you just ask them questions and you listen, and then they don't stop talking. Okay, the second thing they do is they do something called a potato stall. So they go into a busy high street with a stall and a board. People pass by, they give them stickers, and they ask them the question, who is more useful for you, a potato or our Prime Minister, Keir Starmer? And basically everyone puts the sticker on the potato. Okay, so this is done a way to engage in conversation with people and then to invite them to the assembly. They also put up posters in local businesses and invite community leaders and community organisations to attend. Of course, this takes a lot of time and energy and developing new skills, right? How many of us here have the skills to organise an assembly, I wonder, right? If not, we need to learn them. Next is the House of the People project. Assemble and others led the creation of a parallel parliament called the House of the People. And this is a permanent citizens' assembly selected by democratic lottery who review evidence, listen to reports from the community assemblies up and down the country, and then make big decisions on the problems the UK is facing. They held the first one in July. It was over 3 days and 100 people came who were selected through democratic lottery from the local assemblies. And the results will be written into a People's Charter. The website is houseofthepeople.uk. And the Assemble website is timetoassemble.org if you want to find out more. The final few more projects, and I'll pass on. The Sortition Foundation is an organization which organizes democratic lotteries for citizens' assemblies. So whenever there's any event with a deliberative body, they offer a service where they will do the random selection of people. And they've learned from the best practices from around the world. They've also developed an open source software for random stratified selection. And their website is sortitionfoundation.org. The 858 project is a campaign to replace the House of Lords with a House of Citizens. And it's called 858 because it was actually 800 years ago that King Henry II introduced juries to the UK. And juries of ordinary people had been used in the legal system for 800 years. And everybody in the population, right, we support the idea of ordinary people taking part in decisions in the legal system. So if you're not familiar with the House of Lords, it's basically the second chamber to the Houses of Parliament in the UK, and it's a hangover from the UK's feudal past. So the idea is to replace it with randomly selected people from the population, 50% women, and reflect the demographics of the wider population. They'd serve a 2-year term. If you want to know more details, I can tell you again later in the Q&A, but you basically you send invitations to about 30,000 citizens of the population. If you're interested, then you register your interest, you come to an information day, and then, there's a random selection process. It would be about 300 to 400 people. Okay, that's enough of that. And then finally, I think this is the most exciting project happening now in the UK. It's called Cooperation Hull. And it's happening in one of the most deprived cities in England, called Hull, in the north of England. The founders were inspired by other community democracy projects such as Cooperation Jackson in the United States. If you've not heard of Cooperation Jackson, I highly recommend you look that up. They're a network of cooperatives in Mississippi. So Cooperation Hull's goal was to create this new political system from the bottom up through organising these people's assemblies. And this includes neighbourhood assemblies as well as a city-wide assembly of Hull. And they're hoping to inspire other cities to do the same. So after the neighbourhood assembly has made the decision, they then appoint a task force who's elected from the assembly who work with local businesses in Hull in the solidarity economy to carry out the decisions. And the solidarity economy in Hull is the forming of a network of credit unions, cooperatives, cooperative incubators, community land trusts and other mutual aid organisations. And this is, I think, now the very important innovation they've done. Okay? Once they've created a citywide Hull People's Assembly, it will support independent candidates for local election, whose only policy is to be accountable to the Assembly. So the neighbourhood assembly decide on the manifesto, and the independent candidate runs in the election only to carry out the will of the assembly. So I think that that's a template for us, a strategy for us going forwards. You can read more about them at cooperationhull.co.uk. Another similar project is called humanityproject.uk. And then finally, there's another very significant development in UK politics. There's a new party being launched by independent MPs called Jeremy Corbyn, you might know his name, ex-leader of the Labour Party and others. 800,000 people have signed up to show interest in this party, right? That's a lot of people. And they've launched a roadmap for creating a party consisting of regional assemblies and a democratic lottery to select representatives that will go to the national convention in November. Assemble have been in discussions with your party to create a training program to mass upskill the movement, facilitate these regional assemblies, and to build this party as a really democratic party from the bottom up. This includes training on facilitation, community outreach, anti-oppression, assembly culture, and assembly organising. So this could be the first party that is actually serious about transferring power to local people via assemblies. Of course, we're talking about the left, and it's therefore probably no surprise to you that there was a factional dispute already between Jeremy and some others in the party. But let's hope that they sort that out. Okay, to summarise, I described the concept of a citizens' assembly, talked about the current situation we're in, the acceleration of global heating and the need to prepare for social collapse. And I've given you some examples of new assembly democracy projects in the UK. I believe we need a dual strategy approach, one that combines democratic prefiguration, so building these new assemblies, along with entering the system. I don't think we could be successful doing one or the other. So either small, underfunded, isolated local projects on their own, or with a more top-down, traditional left party. We need to merge these together. So I think we need a movement and party that has 4 qualities. It prioritises political change around a compelling vision of a national, new participatory political system. Number 2, it empowers regular people and its policies are decided by ordinary citizens via community assemblies, not by the leaders of the parties, not even by the party members. Right, that's very different to today. And that the members of the party become assembly organisers. Right? We join this movement, we join this party, we get training, we develop skills, and we organise assemblies in our communities, where people work, where we live, where we learn. And finally, we enter our representatives from the assemblies into elections, who then are mandated by us, the assembly. So this combination of oligarchy, inequality, concentration of power, along with advanced technology, with this we now have the ability to destroy ourselves. This is a deadly combination. And I believe that an assembly revolution, which I've introduced, will be crucial if we're going to survive this in some form this century. I hope some of the projects that I've mentioned will inspire you, where you can go away and learn more about them, and even maybe form a new assembly democracy project yourselves in Austria, or wherever you're from. And that's it from me.
Thank you very much. Now there will follow the speech of Pedro. We will make, perhaps Pedro, you could say some words to Jason, how you found the talking of Jason, and make an introduction and a combining to your topics.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, perfect. Well, first, thank you for your presentation. I think that it's really important to think about how we can kind of provide alternatives to this, because let's face it, political structures in place somehow are, like Jason was saying, are a legacy of hierarchical systems. And I think also what he suggested, which is, I think, super important, and at least in my experience, is this lack of familiarity and lack of experience in self-managing, because sometimes people, this kind of the spirit of the day, right? Like, oh, let's try something new, and then it's like, oh, but why didn't it work? And usually it's because people think that this is just a procedural thing, just change the process. But actually, I think that democracy and civic culture is actually living from epistemological position, like what when we talk about AI, what are we talking about in the sense of knowledge? Is this knowledge? Is it not? So I usually start by demystifying a bit technology, so a short introduction, and then I will move on to understanding how AI development in academic and scientific settings actually encodes notions of knowledge and notions of kind of intervention in the world, and how some of these technologies kind of are formed to change or intervene in the world, and what are some political speculation about the possible consequences. I'll try to share my screen, but I think you need to, the meeting host needs to accept screen sharing, because I got a message saying I cannot share screen. So maybe in the settings.
Pedro, I will put now your YouTube. I will put now your YouTube on our screen, because we cannot share this, or we cannot share it within the Zoom. One moment, please.
If not, I can find another way, because I can also stream the slides to YouTube.
No. It's immediately we have it. Now they can see. Shall I do play like this?
I still cannot do it, but as I said, I can try to stream it to YouTube, send you a link.
I have this now on YouTube, and it's okay. Yeah, now we see the.
But I cannot share the screens too. Maybe I try to reconnect, or am I in the...
Or you tell us only without presentation. I don't know.
Können wir nicht moderat als Co-Host?
I think the YouTube would be the simplest one, no?
Welches ist denn der Rechner, von dem aus wir gerade Zoom machen? Wer ist der Zoom-Host?
Das Problem ist, ja, der Thomas, wir können ihn nicht zum Präsentator.
Können wir nicht einen Co-Host nehmen?
Ja, das ist das Problem.
Co-Host?
Ja.
Einfach draufklicken und sagen Zoom-Host.
Warte.
Ein Klick.
Ja, ich brauche nur die Teilnehmerliste. Moment.
Genau.
So, Pedro ist das, oder? Ja.
Hier, genau. Zack.
Und Co-Host ernennen.
Zack.
So.
Bestätigen.
It should work now, Pedro.
Now within Zoom.
Ja.
Okay, now I can. Thank you. So let's go there.
Danke, Robert.
One moment. System. And I go for here. Can you see it now?
Yes, we can see.
Perfect. So if I change, you see. Okay, perfect. So this is, as I said, it starts with a kind of a technical interrogation, and then we will derive some socio-political kind of questions. And I'll try to keep it short so that we can have a chat, because that's the most interesting thing. Let's start. First, we are talking about what deep learning means is that there is an architecture called neural networks that connect many variables or little functions. And basically, the idea is that if you have enough variables, any problem becomes trivial in a way. At least two square codes represent, right? And so to speak a bit about the architecture, is the comic on the right. It says, okay, so is this your machine learning tool? And it says, yeah, it's a bunch of numbers. And I put some data in, and the answer goes out after passing through this world billions sometimes of these variables, right? And then the guy asks, what if they are wrong? No, you stir the numbers until they are right. So in a way, this is brute forcing solutions to problems. If you have almost infinite number of variables, then you kind of adapt them. So anyway, long story short, it's just to demystify it, what we are doing, right? It's just numbers, right? And that makes me think, because representation has dual meaning. One is linguistic representation, or communicative representation, right? The way we refer to things. For instance, when we talk about social categories, civil rights, for instance, or marginalized groups, etc., and we represent them in a certain way in the media. But representation has another meaning, which is a political representation. And I think these two are intertwined to me, right? So, for instance, if you have a party that represents another group, somehow there will be influencing how this group is represented as well. So these are kind of. But what I want to signal here is that we're not talking about this, right? We're talking about these variables, these nodes, like neural network. It has nodes, they are also called neurons, they are numbers. Everything is numbers, and just changing numbers eventually changes the output. And that doesn't mean that there is like neither a mental model in the sense of representation that we use to communicate, nor which sometimes they try as well to like use an AI to say, oh, what would this group think about this? And this is a danger that possibly will kind of face. Albania has its first AI minister. It was revealed just a few days ago, and that's something to follow. So, given that, so let's explore what is being, in my case, my interest was what is being encoded in these technologies. And to do that, I decided to search scientific literature, because I thought that I would find in the scientific literature the kind of deeper, let's say, technical, architectural, and kind of foundational approaches to how these kind of, let's say, now the real representations, people's representations of what the systems should be, you know, how they are encoded in the technical domain. So I thought scientific literature, and what did I search for? First, deep learning, neural network, or artificial intelligence, and then we wanted things related to representation and knowledge. Because I thought that I wanted to know how these are encoded in these concepts that for us are clear knowledge representation, but how the researchers encode, right? So this was the kind of search string. So I searched an academic database, Scopus, and then I used a topic model to understand what are the topics in the literature. And this is something that I'm doing a bit on my free time. It's personal interest rather than work related necessarily, but I plan to follow up on this. And for understanding this, basically I use something which again is numbers, right? These are, I use topic modeling, so I don't use generative AI, but I use something called sentence embeddings, which is basically how the machines themselves perceive. It's the first time the encoding part. So whenever you talk to a generative AI, it first turns text into numbers, and these numbers by themselves, they already allow us, for instance, to do kind of numerical So this is what I did. I clustered together documents based on their numerical representation that captures semantic content, and then I understand what are the topics. And I use key phrases, not words, just to make this like just a little thing. And the result was this. So there was a large number of articles that I could collect like this. You can see here the keywords. So this is the author keywords, what the researchers said they were talking about, and kind of fits what I was thinking. So deep learning, representation, learning AI, with a big emphasis on things like knowledge and representation. And then I plotted the results, and one of the things that I noticed is that China leads by far. Usually every time I look into scientific databases, there's a clear dominance of the US and then UK and Australia. And in this case, I was surprised that China really leads the kind of production of this kind of knowledge. And then we move into what were the findings, right? So and then we can think of it as, okay, so what are the different approaches to knowledge and to representation? This is what it comes up with. It's invisible for now, but as you can see, these are the scientific abstracts clustered together. And then the kind of the label is the key terms that are most associated with each topic. And I started to see that they kind of have more or less kind of logical distribution. For instance, if we look at the left, we see, for instance, code generation in topic 0. I don't know if you can read that. The leftmost says code generator, and then nearby are things like fault diagnosis, anomaly detection, and then neural architecture. And if we look into the right, we see something very different. For instance, image retrieval, expression recognition, person identification, facial recognition. So we can see that there are different kind of logical oppositions, right? One deals with systems like code generation, anomaly detection, and the other deals with visual data or equipment like personal identification, face recognition, etc. And the same in the bottom part. So if you see, for instance, in the left, there is things like symbolic AI, knowledge graph, relation, extraction, word embedding. So here are text, kind of text and meaning related. And then, for instance, to the right, actually it's a bit different. For instance, you have things like graph representation or character recognition, which is between text and, for instance, image captioning or image. So you can see that there is a constellation of functions and of, let's say, pseudo-cognitive or pseudo-cognitive features that basically researchers want to encode in technology. So they basically translate concepts and I was interested in this. And then I decided to understand what are the consequences of this kind of organization of knowledge, right? And also I wanted to understand what does it mean for us that we are concerned and want to understand how to navigate this increasingly technologically mediated world. And I understood that there are two main focuses. One is a practical approach, which is mostly related to But there's another part of the automation, which one of them is connected to things like action recognition, facial recognition, standardization, etc. And here I think that we are pointing to a different form of automation. One is this idea of human readability, which seems to me allows extracting patterns that, unfortunately, since there's no big, we're not talking about a critical approach. Usually here we're talking purely instrumental and kind of technical approaches which are focused on usually profitable goals. So it's clear here this idea of facial recognition, action recognition, that it's a kind of an automation of readability of humans, which in a way kind of puts us into a deeper, more connected relation, which is this ecology of machines. I think these are not separate, right? And of course there are social and social political consequences of this, which we can talk about later. And another thing that there is part of the automation is things like recommendation systems and conversational agents, which they are the reverse, the other side of the coin, right? The computers read us, but the computers also provide us with something. For instance, I don't know, if you buy this, you like that, or if you're, I don't know, do you have, like this ChatGPT things, what is whatever, therapies, people use it for all sorts of ways. And I think we should also understand, or at least the kind of speculation that it brings to mind, is this idea that these supportive systems and this deeper, more intimate integration with kind of finishes the loop, right? The machines read us and the machines kind of give some feedback, and it seems to me that this points to the integration and acceleration of this usual important dichotomy between labor and consumption, which is usually the two ways in which we deal with the market economy, right? And at the same time, it reinforces number one, right? It reinforces this because the more we interact with machines, the more they can extract patterns from us. So this is the two practical approaches that I found. One is automation of machines, and the other is putting the humans in the loop, right? Maybe not always in the better sense of the term, because there's little conversation about issues of agency. Basically, this is considered a technical problem, and the solutions are marketable, so they are self-evident and without need for further justification, usually. So this is the thing I first would like to point to, which is these technologies. They seem to have two implicit goals, and they are we are kind of enmeshed in there in a way that we cannot control, in a way that is very removed from our spheres of action or knowing. The second focus is on knowledge. So these researchers care about automation, but they also care about how to encode knowledge in the machine, let's say. And again, I'll use knowledge and representation with square quotes, because I think it's important to know that we are talking about something which is not what we usually refer to as knowledge or knowledge, right? But let's go on. So the first thing is this very idea of the idea of intelligibility versus something that is not intelligible. And here I find two branches of the literature. One is a branch that assumes that we are talking about emerging non-intelligible structures. Basically, this idea of that is the basis of deep learning, which is you have a very vast number of variables that you cannot humanly think that these technologies also have this potential of short-circuiting our agency, right? Because we are now engaging in unknowable, unintelligible processes. And so how can we combine means and ends if these are escapes our understanding? This is the first thing. So I think that there are lots of implications of this that are not all are clear or obvious. Another tension is the idea that people talk about universal knowledge representations versus domain-specific knowledge. And usually people talk about, or researchers talk about things like generalization or kind of foundations that would be, let's say, universally valid, or for instance, in the media, people talk about AGI, this kind of, how is it called? General intelligence, artificial general intelligence, which is this idea that like one tool to control everything versus things like domain-specific knowledge, things like, okay, for this language we need to use a different tool, or etc. And here, because also since the stated goal of generalizable systems is dominating the discourse, there are also some problems or some risks, right? Because if we lose context, we kind of maybe privileging universal approaches, one-size solutions, one-size-fits-all solutions, which may sacrifice local context and reinforce hegemonic relations, right? And finally, is this idea of purely symbolic data versus sensory-based data. So, for instance, notions like visual identification versus text analysis. And this is, here we see that this notion of that usually we've differentiated in concepts and precepts like perception versus, let's say, conceptualization. And this dichotomy is also being encoded in these technologies, right? So there are these tensions, right? So we looked into things of practice, automation, and things of knowledge, and the automation relates to systems and people, and the knowledge, there are some tensions between this idea of sensorial versus conceptual, domain-specific versus universal, and emerging and intelligible versus explicit relations that are, unintelligible, and researchers can understand what these machines do. And this is more than an answer, it's a provocation and an invitation for engagement and debate. So I have this question, which is basically one question and a three-part question, right? Because we are talking about things like knowing, speaking, and seeing, and we are also understanding that our traditional and familiar contexts and processes are usually embodied interpersonal relations, which is, the basic, let's say, the substrata of social and cultural relations, right? But what happens when knowing, speaking, and seeing become decoupled from these contexts and are integrated and accelerated into this ever-expanding assembly, right? Like this kind of growing mesh of human and non-human relations. And I think this is something that will unfortunately be more and more important for us to talk about, particularly because of the lack of access and kind of detachment that at the level at which these things operate, right? So I think there's lots of consequences So yeah, I don't know if I hope this can spark some interesting discussions. And yeah, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to share.
Dear Pedro, thank you, Pedro, very much for your speech. I tried to the questions, and we are talking later on because the others, they are now have their speech, and then we are making the discussion together. And I try now to make a little combining connects between our democracy theme and this AI we have now. Like Pedro said, we have this deep gap between the experiences of human beings on the one hand and the danger to lose ourselves within the deepness of AI on the other hand. So AI is learning and doing with our experiences and widening their rooms, their AI rooms, and we have on one hand here the direct contact within the human assemblies, yeah, and on the other hand we have this danger to lose ourselves within these circulating spheres of AI. Yeah? As I understood, Pedro, please correct me if it's false. There is this danger that we lose, society loses itself, the connection between the human beings loses itself within this AI sphere somewhere. Yeah? So we have to think about this because Equality by Lot, for example, this American homepage or this American Association Equality by Lot, they now opened a special AI only for Lottocracy and sortition. Yeah? So, but when you come into this AI, you are completely alone. You can upload your papers, your academic papers about sortition and Lottocracy, but you're completely alone within this AI. Yeah? So I ask, so is it possible to talk to other people? No, it's not possible. I only can combine my papers, my written papers within this AI, within this special AI with the written papers of other people. Yeah? So this, to me, this is a big danger that democracy needs the containment, like Alice Petrie, she said yesterday, the containment of a lot of feelings, a lot of presences of human beings. Yeah? In assemblies, we have to bear each other, yes, and AI opens very wide spaces between these human beings. So we have, it's a little bit like the capital, like money. Yeah? So I don't know if it was understandable what I tried to say, but I will try to again. Yeah. So assemblies need human beings and also the that we bear each other, that we could bear each other, and this is not easy. And the AI is such a big Verführung, such a big
temptation.
What?
Temptation.
Temptation, such a big temptation that we need not to bear each other, and that we lose ourselves within AI. So, but now we come back to Heidehammer, to real, concrete political experiences with human beings.
Yes, on the one hand. Es gab eine alte Fantasie, die lautete, den Maschinen die Arbeit, uns das Vergnügen. Ich glaube, das, was wir gerade erleben, ist eher so das Gefühl, dass wir uns den bestimmten Tempi Und die Geschwindigkeit ist einfach atemberaubend, die AI uns vorgibt, dass wir uns dem anpassen müssen. Also dass es mitnichten so ist, dass uns das Vergnügen bleibt, sondern dass wir vielmehr in dieser Aufholbewegung ständig unzureichender werden. Und vielleicht manchmal denke ich auch, dass uns diese zunehmende Form, diese alleinige Form einer elektronischen Entwicklung und nicht einer mechanischen vielleicht noch schneller an unser Ende bringt, nicht zuletzt durch den Energiehunger. Ich frage mich jetzt in meinem Text, der einerseits, wie kommen wir da wieder raus aus dieser Situation und Krisensituation, die wir schon in den letzten beiden Tagen öfter erwähnt haben, aber auch, wie konnte es so weit kommen? Und ich habe zwei Antworten gefunden. Eine lautet Arbeitszeitverkürzung, Arbeitszeitreduktion und die zweite Überwindung der Lohnarbeit. Denn dieser Fetischcharakter der Ware und der wahre Arbeitskraft verbindet die Sozialdemokratie mit diversen trotzkistischen Strömungen und der neoliberalen Erzählung, du bist, was du tust. Eine bedeutsame Gegenbewegung bilden die verschiedenen Ansätze eines Grundeinkommens, das einen Bruch mit der internalisierten Gewalt des Lohnarbeitssystems zumindest denkt.
Ich habe das schon ganz untergedrückt.
Nicht ganz.
Okay.
Vielleicht so besser. Also einen Bruch mit der internalisierten Gewalt des Lohnarbeitssystems, möglicherweise durch Fantasien eines bedingungslosen Grundeinkommens. Marx schreibt am Ende seines Vortrags Lohn, Preis und Profit aus dem Jahre 1865 einerseits von der Notwendigkeit der Kämpfe um Lohnstandards, also gleichsam gewerkschaftliche Organisierung und Widerstand gegen die Gewalttaten des Kapitals. Er betrachtet diese Kämpfe als unzertrennliche Begleiterscheinungen des Lohnsystems mit wenig mehr Aussicht als der Behauptung des gegebenen Werts der Arbeit. Das sei den Bedingungen inhärent, da die Arbeiterinnen sich selbst als Ware feilbieten müssen. Die Arbeiterinnenklasse würde aber so lediglich gegen die unliebsamen Wirkungen kämpfen, nicht gegen die Ursachen. Und Marx sagt, vielmehr sollte sie, also die Arbeiterinnenklasse, begreifen, Zitat, dass das gegenwärtige System bei all dem Elend, das es über sie verhängt, zugleich schwanger geht mit den materiellen Bedingungen, möglicherweise, und den gesellschaftlichen Formen, die für eine ökonomische Umgestaltung der Gesellschaft notwendig sind. Statt des konservativen Mottos, ein gerechter Tagelohn für ein gerechtes Tagewerk, sollte sie auf ihr Banner die revolutionäre Losung schreiben, nieder mit dem Lohnsystem. Allein bislang ist es uns nicht gelungen, jene Perspektive, die Marx hier anklingen lässt, in den Wunsch nach Mitbestimmung zu transformieren. Ein bescheidener Schritt auf dem Weg von Marxens revolutionärer Losung nieder mit dem Lohnsystem ist der Kampf um Arbeitszeitverkürzung. Die Transformation, also eine qualitative Veränderung, ein Prozess des Werdens, war schon mal schillernder, als wir noch dachten, dass wir alle Zeit der Welt haben und die Krisenphänomene des Kapitalismus, das Elend der Kriege und die ökologischen Katastrophen nicht so nahe an uns herangerückt waren. Es mag zwar etwas seltsam anmuten, dass ich bei einer anarchistisch orientierten Tagung mit einem ausführlichen Marx-Zitat beginne. Allein in Fragen der Lohnarbeit und ihrer Stellung in der kapitalistischen Vergesellschaftung erscheint mir Marx als luzider Denker. Die kürzeste Version lautet wohl: kein Kapitalismus ohne Lohnarbeit. Und Kapitalismus, das lernen wir nicht zuletzt bei Bini Adamczak, ist mit der Drohung zumindest des sozialen Todes, des Ausschlusses aus der Gemeinschaft der Werktätigen oder auch der Volksgemeinschaft verbunden. Robert Menasse geht in einem Text für Die Presse, einer österreichischen Tageszeitung, bis an die Schmerzgrenze dieses Zusammenhangs von Arbeit und Todesdrohung. Sein Appell als Titel lautet: Verlernt die alte Losung. Darunter ist ein Bild vom Schriftzug Arbeit macht frei über den KZ-Toren von Auschwitz zu sehen. Im Untertitel fragt Menasse: Was tut sie? Macht sie frei? Ja, wirklich? Über die Arbeit eine Anmerkung zu Freiheit und Wahn. Darin sind einige Stellen bemerkenswert, nicht nur sein Beginn mit der Suche nach einem ersten Satz, der in der vernutzten Zeit, ein halber Tag, nicht mehr als gesellschaftlicher Durchschnitt und somit Notwendigkeit gelten kann, schon gar nicht in Zeiten von Jacobetty, das aber zu der Zeit der Veröffentlichung des Textes 2007 noch nicht verfügbar war. Menasses erster Satz lautet also nach Stunden der Suche: Arbeit ist ein Verhängnis. Der zweite Satz: Noch das äußerste Bewusstsein vom Verhängnis droht zum Geschwätz zu entarten. Also als das äußerste Verhängnis betrachtet Menasse die Aufschrift auf den Toren der Konzentrationslager, mit Ausnahme von Buchenwald. Dort prangte der Spruch: jedem das Seine. Das äußerste Bewusstsein wiederum in Bezug auf dieses Verhängnis wäre, dass der Satz ernst gemeint war, keinesfalls zynisch, und wir uns davon noch immer nicht befreit haben. Es ist ein Glaubenssatz, den Sozialdemokratinnen, Trotzkistinnen, Neoliberale, vielleicht wir alle teilen. Der Kommandant des KZ Auschwitz, Rudolf Höss, teilte ihn und betrachtete die Leitung von Auschwitz als Arbeit. Normale, selbstbestimmte Arbeit. Und Menasse konstatiert, dass eine Theorie der Arbeit heute zwar nicht mehr mit den Variablen Volk, Nation und Reich arbeitet, dennoch mit den historischen Verbrechern eine Utopie teilt. Das, was wir gewohnt sind, Arbeit zu nennen, macht uns zu einem Mitglied der Gesellschaft, die sich frei nennt. Wir müssen glauben, der Spruch über den Toren, über den KZ-Toren, wäre zynisch gewesen. Vielmehr sollten wir es aber als barbarisch betrachten, nach Auschwitz noch immer von der Arbeit das Wohl der Menschen abzuleiten. Es gab nach 1945 keine Stunde Null der Arbeit und es gibt bestimmt keine Arbeitsdemokratie. Menasse sagt, Demokratie wird vielmehr vernichtet, weil Demokratie politisches Denken voraussetzt, Arbeit aber nur betriebswirtschaftliche Logik zulässt. Lohnarbeit. Nicht unser Stoffwechsel mit der Natur, den wir immer brauchen werden. Selbst wenn bei uns das Wahlalter, bemerkenswert an Menasses Sicht ist auch die globale Dimension. Ein letztes illustratives Zitat. Selbst wenn bei uns das Wahlalter noch weiter gesenkt wird, werden die Kinder der Welt, deren Arbeit einen Teil unserer Freiheit produziert, eher den Tod finden als Mitbestimmung in unserer Welt, die wir die Freie nennen. Gegen Ende seines Textes lässt Menasse uns nicht ganz ungetröstet. Er verweist auf den Buchstaben B im Wort Arbeit. Dieses steht auf dem Kopf. Der Häftling Jan Liwacz war Kunstschlosser und musste diese Buchstaben schmieden. Der Kopfstand des Buchstaben B war der bewusste Protest von Jan Liwacz. Er überlebte und wurde in Ebensee, einem Nebenlager von Mauthausen, befreit. Freiheit beginnt für Menasse dort, wo man die Arbeit buchstäblich auf den Kopf stellt. Die Erkenntnis von Marx von 1865, der schwache Trost von Menasse aus dem Jahr 2007 und noch ein schöner Aufsatz von John Holloway, irgendwann zwischen 2011 und 2014 in den Grundrissen veröffentlicht, weisen uns einen Ausweg. Die Grundrisse, das war eine Zeitschrift für linke Theorie und Debatte, die in Wien zwischen 2001 und 2014 erschienen ist. Holloways Text trägt den Titel das Kapital lesen. Der erste Satz. Oder das Kapital beginnt mit dem Reichtum, nicht mit der Ware. Dieser erste Satz im Kapital von Karl Marx lautet vollständig: Der Reichtum der Gesellschaften, in welchem kapitalistische Produktionsweise herrscht, erscheint als eine ungeheure Warensammlung, die einzelne Ware als ihre Elementarform. Holloway argumentiert, Reichtum und Ware stehen nicht in einem identischen Verhältnis, sondern in einem antagonistischen. Der Reichtum ist gesellschaftlich, vielfältig, kreativ und in Bewegung. Die Ware hingegen reduziert diese Reichhaltigkeit auf einzelne Objekte für den Tausch. In seiner Analyse von Subjekt, Objekt und Prädikat dieses Satzes befragt Holloway den Text im Hinblick auf den aktuellen Kampf gegen den Kapitalismus. Mit dem Marx der Grundrisse, dem Text zur Zeitschrift sozusagen, führt uns Holloway in das Universum des Werdens, in die im universellen Austausch erzeugte Universalität der Bedürfnisse, Fähigkeiten, Genüsse, Produktivkräfte etc. der Individuen, in das Feld der Beziehungen, der Kollektive und Commons. Holloway passte gut in die Phase der Sozialforenbewegung, der EZLN in Mexiko und im Allgemeinen der Aufbruchsstimmung einer Linken in den frühen 2000er Jahren. Sein wohl bekanntestes Buch Die Welt verändern, ohne die Macht zu übernehmen, erschien 2002. Nicht, Zitat, nicht weil wir arm sind, kämpfen wir gegen den Kapitalismus, sondern weil die absolute Entfaltung unseres kreativen Potenzials frustriert ist, weil die absolute Bewegung des Werdens angeleint ist. Es ist unser Reichtum, der sein Haupt erhebt und brüllt, dass er seine Fesseln sprengen wird. Das ist politische Poesie, die nicht auf das revolutionäre Subjekt als Klassensubjekt setzt, aber schon auf die Multitude, dessen Parole nicht die Arbeit hoch ist oder vielleicht war, sondern Mayday. Einmal noch Marx, ein früher Marx, ein kurzes Zitat aus den ökonomisch-philosophischen Manuskripten von 1844. Der Arbeiter fühlt sich daher erst außer der Arbeit bei sich und in der Arbeit außer sich. Zu Hause ist er, wenn er nicht arbeitet, und wenn er arbeitet, ist er nicht zu Hause. Seine Arbeit ist daher nicht freiwillig, sondern gezwungen, Zwangsarbeit. Sie ist daher nicht die Befriedigung eines Bedürfnisses, sondern sie ist nur ein Mittel, um Bedürfnisse außer ihr zu befriedigen. Damit wir alle mehr Flausen im Kopf, mehr Zeit für Langeweile und Zuhause-Sein haben, habe ich 2021, durchaus unter dem Eindruck der Pandemie, eine Petition an den Wiener Gemeinderat eingebracht. Titel: Stufenweise Verkürzung der Normalarbeitszeit für Bedienstete der Stadt Wien auf 30 Stunden pro Woche. Mit diesem zugegeben zahnlosen Instrument einer Petition wollten wir, das ist die Partei Links, ein neues Normal überhaupt erst wieder denk- und besprechbar machen. Zwischen 1970 und 1975 wurde die Arbeitszeit in Österreich in 3 Etappen von 45 auf 40 Stunden reduziert. Diesem Generalkollektivvertrag ging 1969 ein von ÖGB und SPÖ initiiertes Volksbegehren voraus, das fast 900.000 Wahlberechtigte unterzeichneten. Selbstverständlich hatten auch wir, also 2021, gute Argumente: feministische, ökologische, gesundheitliche, arbeitsmarktpolitische, globale, kämpferische oder einfach hedonistische. Wir haben nicht nur Online-Unterstützungsunterschriften gesammelt, sondern auch auf der Straße, bei U-Bahn-Stationen und im Park und waren sehr erstaunt, dass sehr viele Personen bereit waren zu unterschreiben, dass ausgerechnet die Bediensteten der Stadt Wien als erste eine Arbeitszeitreduktion auf 30 Stunden pro Woche bekommen sollten. Wir haben allerdings auch nur in Wien gesammelt. Hier ist das Image der Gemeindeverwaltung jenseits unseres Ansinnens sehr hoch. Vielleicht wirklich dank guter Verwaltung, jedenfalls dank der guten Imagekampagne der MA48, das ist die Müllentsorgung. Die ist auch witzig. Neben der Bestattung Wien, die ist auch sehr witzig. Die Stadt sorgt aber auch für erlebbare Communities. Mein Lieblingsbeispiel ist die Infrastruktur an zum Beispiel der alten Donau. Also es gibt sehr viele Naturbadeplätze, die sehr schön eingerichtet sind und gratis allen zur Verfügung stehen, sehr selbstverständlich. Dass Leute weniger arbeiten wollen, zeigen Phänomene wie Quiet Quitting, hierorts besser bekannt als Dienst nach Vorschrift. Oder der Subreddit Anti-Work mit 2,9 Millionen Userinnen und der Gruppenbeschreibung Unemployment for all, not just the rich. Einiges sträubt sich in mir gegen eine Homogenisierung der Arbeiterinnenklasse à la Didier Eribon oder Edouard Louis. Der Zusammenhang von Lohnarbeit und den darin geübten Praktiken der Unterwerfung und die Faszination und Attraktivität von autoritären Lösungen ist dennoch plausibel. Dass gerade auch damit ein Freiheitsversprechen einhergeht, hat uns Robert Menasse gezeigt. Die Frage ist also, welche Attraktivität können wir dem entgegensetzen, also dieser Begeisterung für die Arbeit und für Leistung. Binney Adamczak sagt, was ist noch attraktiver als genug Geld zu haben und sich eine Zugfahrkarte an den Ort der Wahl kaufen zu können, also an den Ort meiner Wahl kaufen zu können? Ihre Antwort, einfach in den nächsten Zug steigen und dorthin fahren. Das Klimaticket, das kann man sich in Österreich kaufen, da kann man alle Verkehrsmittel nutzen, die es in diesem Land gibt. Das Klimaticket ist eine dahingehend attraktive Lösung, wird allerdings nur von 3% der österreichischen Wohnbevölkerung genutzt, sprich gekauft. Das mag viele gute Gründe haben, einer davon ist der Preis dieses Tickets. Jedenfalls scheint das keine Lösung für die vielen zu sein. 300.000 Klimatickets, Stand Ende 2024, stehen gut 9 Millionen Bewohnerinnen gegenüber. Was wäre, damit möchte ich jetzt schließen mit 3 Fragen, was wäre, wenn öffentliche Verkehrsmittel gratis allen zur Verfügung stehen würden? Was wäre, wenn wir alle an jedem Ort der Welt willkommen wären, überall ein Zuhause haben könnten? Und wie könnten die Entscheidungen darüber fallen, wie wir alle zusammen das organisieren?
Thank you very much, Heide. She talked about that we need to work less. We should all work less so that we have more time for public assemblies. And Maria, Sabine, now your contribution will be not so long as the others, so that we have time to discuss afterwards.
Yeah, I'm going to mostly be speaking in English. Is this like everybody's hearing me well? So this is the first time I'm doing a panel like this. I'm more engaged oftentimes in discussions or leading workshops in small groups to do all sorts of things, from repairing phones on every Friday, which I missed this Friday, and attending protests, demonstrations, helping people how to, especially activists, journalists, whoever really, if they're under the threat of repression or under the threat of surveillance, to educate them in means of surveillance self-defense. Otherwise, like my boring day job as an engineer is boring, and I look at a lot of numbers and I look at a lot of heat conversion diagrams and emission diagrams, mostly for different like coolants, fluids, and etc. So, kind of where I can start most recently, as people know, in like starting in the local context, because I'm in Vienna. The last time I attended a significant assembly was yesterday, and in February. In February it was the People's Platform, and yesterday was because there was, I think, a Christian national something protest, and there was a queer feminist collective that was organizing it. I stopped by and just checked out the food, and it was lovely. But back to the bigger kind of organization that I was like it was the first time I've attended something like this, and it was really enlightening to meet people from everywhere. It was the People's Platform held here in Vienna, which kind of does have a symbolic significance, because Vienna is in the EU but not in NATO. And it was interesting to kind of see people from everywhere, from the Balkans, from Eastern Europe, from Western Europe, and even from Latin America, because there were some Colombian friends and collectives that attended. And the idea of the platform generally was that we, in Europe, and I use that term loosely because I'm not sure where we draw the line between Europe and other regions, and I really dislike the concept of borders or the boundaries of culture as a thing. But it was mostly focused on reclaiming this like kind of democratic participation initiatives that are present everywhere, really. Like they're present in the Balkans, they're present in Eastern Europe against war and self-organizing against war. They're present in Asia, Africa, and even throughout like the entire human history. We just haven't had or were forced by authority or people with more guns to either listen to their rules because they dictate the rules, we do not. And kind of how my involvement came in the platform was I was another person registering and I wrote what I was interested in, and I just got contacted by a person and I was like, hey, we're getting like 20 or 30 people who also have this kind of range of expertise, and we think it's better if we just self-organize our own technology panel. Because why go to the, I don't know, some other workshop where we can like really kind of incubate this knowledge of technology and these like very radical differences, right? Because not only can I from an engineering perspective find the flaws in the system or in something, but like I like to consider myself more socially aware of engineers and notice where the gaps in social knowledge are. I don't need to say this, but I will because it's like something that has to be said. Engineers right now, and I think in the last like 70 or 80 years, are actively not taught the social conditions that created one of the most important like modern advancements of technology. I would argue that it's even further back. I would argue that it's like 150 years or even more. But that's a side tangent longer than this entire conference, so I'm just going to stick to the bullet points. In the platform, we discussed three main topics. Self-organizing without the threat of surveillance. What are the current challenges and future challenges we must face? Secondly, how do we self-organize without reproducing the boundaries of capitalism and becoming fascists? Because there is a very, very real threat of these very vibrant cultural movements, and I use the word cultural like in the sense that culture influences politics, not the other way around. And from the inception of the internet, the culture of the internet now with the invent of, I hate to give it to them, I really hate to give it to Trump, but he somehow has managed to take this vibrant, mimetic internet culture and turn it into fascism. And I argue that Curtis Yarvin, Nick Land are the two most significant fascist philosophers that have been done. You might know Nick Land from his time working with Sadie Plant and Mark Fisher, if everybody here knows Mark Fisher. I think they are probably one of the best modern people who criticize capitalism and this like iteration of fascism, which I don't think is fascism, but again, even longer topic. And then the third topic that we kind of organized was how do we actually implement the demands of these communities? Right, so three really simple things. On the first topic, there are a few looser organizations that do electronic self-defense against surveillance. One of them is the Electronic Frontier Foundation, which is sadly an American organization, and most of the local contexts are from there. However, I believe that they have done significant contributions into looking at how trends worldwide and this like standardization of technology can impact everybody, from people in the Middle East to people in Africa to people in Latin America, because again we are using the same tools, we are using the same apps, we are using the same phones and operating systems. So one of the ways we can combat this is by just by having phones that run free software that don't really have spyware on them. And this is really easy because if you look at the history of the development of free software and the development of computers and operating systems, The first computer really wasn't trying to listen to you. The first computer was crunching numbers, and I think we can really stick to that as the simplest rule imaginable. It is very easy to just create tools that do not actively harm you. It's actually harder to make these tools listen to you, constantly track you, constantly be energy hungry, constantly collect data, and so on and so forth. And this is just how the Electronic Frontier Foundation likes to present itself and its contributions. The other one is Amnesty International and its Citizen Information and Security Lab, which is really good at what it does, and they have essentially created using libraries and open source libraries in Python. One of the only mobile verification tools which basically looks at every single installed app on your phone. So if you are a journalist or human rights activist or a worker who goes between borders to help migrants, you oftentimes face the risk of your phone getting seized or your personal electronics getting seized, and then on those you have surveillance software installed. What the software, the scanning software does, mobile verification, it basically looks at every single package installed and it scans it, and you basically have these things that are called indication markers. So I probably just give me a quick show of hands. Who has heard of the software called Celebrite or Pegasus as surveillance software? Just in general, for those who haven't, they are two of the most popular tools that are available in Austria, in Czechia, Germany, almost all of the EU countries, the Emirates, and most Middle Eastern countries, which are used to basically ruin your privacy. So any kind of detainment by the police, and if you do not have your phone with you, you're kind of fucked. Because Celebrate is a phone breaking tool, so in essence you don't have your phone with you, but you refuse to unlock it. It brute forces every single password attempt. While Celebrate, that is phone cracking software, and there's a difference between spyware, which is oh, we just have your phone number, or we know which Wi-Fi network you're connected to, or something else, and we infect your phone. And right now, I cannot stress how important this tool is, mobile verification, to actively combat this, and how important the work that the Amnesty International Citizen Lab is doing this. Because evidences of this have been found everywhere from Serbia to Saudi Arabia. And it is the same tool by the same company doing the same thing. And to me, that is very scary. One of the ways we can do this is by using communication networks that actively do not log data. One of them is Signal. Another one is Session. A third one is SimpleX. They are all based on the Signal protocol that the Signal Foundation has developed, which is open source. Anybody, from the simplest person who does not understand jack shit from coding and software to software and security leaders and experts who have spent 10 years doing this, have seen it. And then we can talk later about the two other points because they kind of connect back with what they both have been saying.
I really do not want to interrupt you. It was just, I am this simple person. No, please.
I showed her that we have to round up because we want to discuss with the audience.
But this is the most important thing that the platform, I believe, was focusing in. The other two topics, I can just answer any questions, and I leave it up to everybody to ask me.
Thank you very much, Sabine. So we open now for you. We have half an hour for discussion. Please. Yes, you get the micro, of course.
Ja, danke für den Vortrag. Ich bin ja nicht in diese Diskursgemeinschaft beobachter. Aber mir sind zwei Punkte aufgefallen. Das erste ist die Realität der Arbeitszeiten in Österreich. Wir haben 60 Stunden mögliche Regelarbeitszeit seit 5 Jahren. Darum sage ich, wenn Sie jetzt für 30 Stunden eintreten bei Azubis ersetzt werden, die dann für das gleiche Geld 60 Stunden arbeiten werden. Und da gibt es keine Demonstrationen mehr. Das ist die Realität und bei uns ist immer der Fokus auf Angestelltenverhältnisse. Das wäre der eine Punkt. Und das zweite ist der digitale Mehrwertgewinn oder der Gewinn aus der digitalen Wirtschaft, der neuen Technologien, der kommt ja nur wenigen zugute in Wirklichkeit. Wenn Sie sich Amazon und all diese anderen Firmen, wo Menschen sind, die Milliardäre sind, die einen gewissen faschistischen Oligarchen teilweise anhängen, großen Einfluss auf die Politik sind, die eigentlich kaum mehr arbeiten, wo Algorithmen für sie arbeiten. Und die Entwicklung in den nächsten Jahren schon wird sein, dass wir vielleicht 90% der ganzen Verwaltungs- und ähnlichen Tätigkeiten auslagern in digitale Sklaven und die dienen dann nur einer kleinen Minderheit von weltweit agierenden Konzernen und teilweise nur wenigen Leuten. Da sehe ich den Gewinn, wie verteilen wir das? Es wird sich ändern und radikal, seien es Lehrberufe oder in den Ämtern. Aber wie wird dieser Mehrgewinn verteilt? Momentan wird er so verteilt, dass viele Leute als Handlanger arbeiten, Millionen für manche Firmen und die digitalen Mehrwertgewinne von ganz wenigen, die dann nicht einmal Steuern zahlen, entgestraft werden. Danke.
Yes, we're now collecting questions if there are any more. Yes, okay, Peter. You will immediately. Okay.
Is everybody hearing me well? Yeah, okay. Can I speak in English? Okay. I already want to answer your question, and I want to kind of start it with another question. Who do you think is the labor force training these exact AI models to recognize these images as fact? This is already a fact happening in many Southeast Asian countries where these bigger corporations can avoid laws by just building these huge data centers and paying a really cheap labor workforce. Like, this is already the reality. We're just trying to stop the complete advancement of it. This is something that the American company Palantir is trying to do actively, and we must do absolutely everything in our power to stop this. Thank you.
So, Peter.
Okay, I can really talk loud. Do I need a mic? Okay. Thank you all for here in the room and online, Pedro, for your presentations. That was very interesting, and I tried to connect them somehow together. And I remember the picture you showed, Pedro, with the different things that have a kind of logic. So I saw, Jason, your talk about, I would say, participatory democratic structures, citizens' assemblies, neighborhood assemblies, and so forth. And I could easily connect this to your talk about a reduction of work time. I would say let's radicalize this to abolish work, yes, because one needs time. There are only 24 hours a day, and the time to really engage oneself in democratic assemblies. You cannot do that if you have to work from morning to night. So the other connection was very easy to make for me. The other two things were about technology, dangers of technology, of AI and of surveillance technology, which are also for me very easy to combine. But now I have some difficulty to combine those two clusters with each other's. Maybe you can help me there for a bit.
Did you understand the question?
Yes.
Yes.
Pedro meldet sich auch.
Yeah.
So,
First, Maria, then Pedro.
So I can kind of connect with what Pedro is working on because we kind of share the same field. the advent of surveillance technology and the desire of a dominant force to enact surveillance to the point where your thoughts are the only thing that are like to yourself is not like it's not new. However, this desire became amplified with the invention of the internet. And that is something we have to keep in mind and is now accelerated with these AI models, right? So the idea is that like, oh, you can just, instead of a human doing the surveillance and putting real human hours, we just like kind of, do this, and it's over there, it's away from us. The system can racially profile people, the system can check if a person who is from this background, living in this neighborhood, in this crime-ridden district, is doing some searches that, we don't like, right? And you basically kind of add these social categories of crime or crime indicators to mark this. There is a really wonderful book by Sofia Amoya-Immobile, how search algorithms exacerbate racial stereotypes for black women, which you can read further.
Now, Pedro, I will try to make you loud, that the people here can hear you.
May I also ask you, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I also struggle, and I think that maybe this is the kind of challenge of our times, is actually to understand these kind of bridges that, because of the layers of complexity and the inaccessibility of technology, where the decisions are made, the kind of procedures and features, they are so far removed from our familiar context that they basically add a very thick, obscure layer to our social dynamics, which again are increasingly measured. But I think that to also kind of connect to the different speakers, which is I think that here we are talking about how capitalism actually kind of tends to project kind of man and nature, or humans and nature into these disembodied relations of equivalence. And here we're talking about our livelihoods, our bodies, our minds, because labor projects all of these kind of attributes and our personal attributes into abstract relations, which then can be kept on and also nature, right? The land, the ocean, the animals, the plants, the raw materials, all of these. Capitalism projects them into kind of these abstract relations where, I don't know, 3 trees are worth, 500 fish, and which, it does then allow this kind of, people call it market, but let's say it's basically a power structure that operates through dispossession, through the poverty, right? Basically making things very depleted of their attributes, basically just relationships of pure equivalence. They pay me X, they pay someone else Y, that doesn't matter who I am, I just know this kind of relationship, right? And I think that in this sense, technology is capital, because technology also projects it's basically a kind of, at least technology anti-capitalism, just projects all of these things into a faster vortex. So now we are talking about my feelings, for instance, the conversation I have with my mother, if I have it on a social media, this is now raw material. So maybe we are talking about a new period of primitive accumulation, where there's this kind of natural wealth that was untapped by capitalism, like, I don't know, my intimate emotional experiences, right? Or my ideas, because now these AIs, they are training a vast number of words. Someone produced it, right? And all of a sudden, this kind of social produced wealth in a way is capital, because it's just kind of reinforces these relationships and extractivity.
Pedro, I will silence you, and Heide wanted to say something.
Ich glaube, ein Problem ist eben, dass wir eigentlich keine sehr vernünftigen Wesen sind und der Kapitalismus uns halt mit sehr viel auch emotionalen Angeboten versieht und auch mit sehr praktischen Angeboten, die sich gerade auch so auf der Plattformebene abspielen. Also zum Beispiel glaube ich ja, dass es ein total schlauer Gedanke ist, sowas wie Airbnb zu haben. Ich habe da eine Plattform, ich mag Hotels nicht besonders gern, also ich mag Hotels nicht besonders gern. Und dann will ich irgendwo hingehen und dann brauche ich aber dort auch ein Dach unter dem Kopf. Und deswegen waren, glaube ich, meine 3 Fragen einerseits sehr naiv, aber ich glaube, es schließt an Bedürfnisse an, die wir tatsächlich haben und die werden dann halt kapitalistisch befriedigt. Und die Frage ist, welche Möglichkeiten können wir uns überhaupt noch vorstellen, das anders als kapitalistisch zu befriedigen, die nicht mit extrem hohen sozialen Aufwänden verbunden sind. Weil sowas wie Couchsurfing, das es glaube ich noch immer gibt, stellt schon sehr hohe Ansprüche an unsere Anpassungsleistungen. Und das andere ist zum Beispiel diese Frage einer Socialist Calculation Debate oder der Frage, wer vermittelt zwischen den Produzentinnen und den Konsumentinnen, wenn es nicht der Markt ist. Und da gibt es, glaube ich, auch eine sehr umfangreiche Debatte, also zum demokratischen Planen zum Beispiel. Aber ich fand wirklich deine Ausführungen, Sabine, sehr, sehr... Es geht mir immer so, ne, in diesen Veranstaltungen, ich denke mir dann, ja, ne, also es kann doch nicht so schwierig sein, sich zumindest der herkömmlichsten, der simpelsten Überwachungsmethoden auf meinem Handy oder auf meinem Computer so zu entledigen, aber wir tun es dann nicht, weil Kapitalismus uns natürlich auch mit sehr einfachen Lösungen ausstattet, die wahnsinnig attraktiv erscheinen.
Are there any other questions from the audience or remarks?
Nämlich, was sind denn momentan die Demografien von den Leuten beteiligen? Weil das ist ja so ein klassisches Problem, dass überall nur politische Beteiligung auf einem Hotel auf eine Wiederweisung haben. Okay, also die Frage ist, wie es um die Demografie besteht bei den Assemblies, die momentan stattfinden. Also wie ist die Zusammensetzung der Menschen? Weil es gibt ja so eine Tendenz dazu, dass bei politischen Konzepten, die auf freiwillige Beteiligung beruhen, dass am Ende Menschen mit Ressourcen da hocken und tendenziell auch nicht was können. Ist es so im Moment? Also wie sieht es in der UK so aus?
I also have a question which is connected to this. So what's necessary to make citizen assemblies a success? Because I also, when I think about it makes me intrigued to participate in something like this. But then when I think about my work life and my social life, it's really difficult to find the time. And so I wanted to ask what's necessary or what can help make these concepts successful.
Also, for this?
Ja, ich wollte nochmal auf den Punkt zurückkommen. Es geht darum, wer kontrolliert die digitale Herrschaft. Wir sind ja derzeit mit diesen Large Language Models eigentlich noch in einem Frühstadium der Technologie. Es wird noch Jahre dauern, bis General Intelligence wirklich vorhanden ist. Das heißt, ein autonom handelndes System. Aber da sehe ich das Problem nicht nur, wie das trainiert wird, sondern wer bestimmt darüber, nach welchen Kriterien dieses System dann entscheiden wird. Und der Begriff künstliche Intelligenz ist ja sprachlich, ich würde eher sagen, digitale Kompetenz. Und wenn ich mir denke, ich war vorgestern auf der AI, also Elektronik, Entschuldigung, in Linz, und da gibt es ein einfaches Programm, ich kann alles eingeben von meinem Garten und der wird innerhalb von Sekunden wird mir genau geliefert, nach welchen Kriterien ich das zu setzen habe. Das hat früher Landschaftsgärtner gemacht, das geht jetzt um ein paar Cent. Aber wir zahlen einen hohen Preis für unsere Daten und der Kontrolle.
Shall I go first? Yeah, I think your questions are some of the most important questions that we need to come up with solutions to. Essential, maybe the most important question of the century past. How do we involve people in community assemblies today? Ordinary people, not people who are just like us, right? And yeah, that is a big challenge. I mean, in the UK, many people are struggling to even put food on the tables now, right? So if we knock on their doors and we say, come along to this new exciting project where we're going to talk about problems and come up with solutions, you need to sacrifice an evening of your week. You have a hard, you work long hours. You want your evenings to relax, rejuvenate. You've got children to look after. So absolutely, we need to address that. I think so. One of the things is we need to try to address people's psychological needs. One is, connection, human connection. So many people are experiencing loneliness in society. So the assemblies need to be places where people get something from them. They're not just these instrumental processes, but they're part of building, human connection again. So things like food, music, adding cultural events to the assemblies, and then also assemblies addressing this question and finding solutions themselves. So what can we do to make them more inclusive? There are often things like action groups set up for supporting people with childcare, for example. So that's one thing. Obviously, in a future society, people will be allocated time to attend. In a democratic society, people need to be allocated time to attend meetings. Maybe, one day every month is Democracy Day or something, and people attend their local community assembly, but we're not there yet. So yeah, it's a very important question. These projects in the UK, they're very much learning projects. So we're trying to get data and learn things. We don't have all the answers. And then in terms of citizens' assemblies, so the proposal, for example, to have a national citizens' assembly where anyone in the population would attend, they would get paid, they'd get salaries. So the salaries that are going currently to people who are in the House of Lords, the money will just go towards ordinary people. So you'd be asked to pause your job that you have for 2 years and attend the National Citizens' Assembly. I mean, there are challenges also geographically, of course. Someone living in Scotland will have to come down to London. So these are challenges, absolutely, but I think they are solvable. And then you also asked about demographic. Was it,
Women, men.
What is the demographic makeup?
Right, yeah.
Are there more men now? No.
I mean, there's certainly, as you expect, people that tend to come are people that are a bit more politically interested on the left. But this is just the beginning, I suppose. So, Yeah. Okay. You want to speak?
Did you
Und
want
der Pedro will dann ruhig auch noch
Pedro.
sagen.
Pedro? Okay. Pedro? Pedro first and you? Okay. So Pedro, I will make you loud. It takes a little time. You're singing, Pedro?
Okay. Can you hear me? Can you just confirm?
Yes, we hear you.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, I think I'm observing also this situation for a long time, and I think that it's very interesting from an organizational perspective. But I also have a kind of let's say, I agree with the previous speaker because he suggested that this notion of expanding participation to things that are vital to us, community, but also work, right? Let's face it, wage, for instance, as an example. Although I think that there's something that I look forward to because is when I analyze it from a more cultural perspective, I see that the question of time, for instance, we have cultural habits of going out for a beer, going to the movies with friends, going for a hike. And these kind of things, everybody understands and nobody would question or nobody even would kind of not imagine delivering these kind of things in one way or another. But unfortunately, most of them are mediated either by market, consumption, so we go for a club, we go, and so even we either are working or kind of consuming. It's the two most options that we have. And I think that one interesting thing is we need to understand how to make, let's say, another sphere, not mediated by the state, not mediated by the market. And I see culturally, like I think we need to build structures, that cultural structures that, for instance, if I say today is neighborhood day, everybody would understand. They would know, for instance, that I would go to my neighborhood or some other context or whatever, and kind of engage in the participatory decision making, maybe a social form of care and labor. Who are the neighbors? I live in a neighborhood. Who are the neighbors that live alone? What do they need? What can I give them? And I think that we should have, I don't know, I see democratic culture as this, and I think that it requires this expansion to a kind of cultural everyday practice that everybody recognizes. It would mean also that our organizational aspects kind of become also a bit more flexible because I have some arrangement with a neighbor, but it would be meshed in the daily, the routines of people. So yeah, that's all I dream about these days. And I think that it starts with culture and care. Yeah.
Thank you. Sabina, did you want to say something? No, Pedro?
I think it's your turn.
I kind of want to expand on just like add a little comment. Every engineer has to learn operational research, and one of the first things you learn is the purpose of a system is what it does, not what it claims to do. And when thinking of these semi-totalitarian or totalitarian in the making AI systems, just keep in the back of your mind that these are sorting really good sorting algorithms. These are bullshit makers where you put bullshit in and you get bullshit out, right? And the best thing you can do is work towards turning them off. And one of the things that was said as a question is who are the ones controlling the digital realm right now? It is known as the former GAFA network, Google, Amazon, Facebook, and Azure. And that's kind of still the same. Google is the largest search engine and they are holding a monopoly on that. Everybody uses it. Facebook, formerly Facebook, now Meta controls WhatsApp, Instagram, Snapchat, and they're now trying to get Viber. And then you have Azure Cloud, which is one of the world's biggest cloud service providers. So imagine every time you make a website, every time you have an IP address or an IPv4 domain, they are the ones controlling it. So it's also a problem of scale, because how do you imagine more than 2 billion devices online? Because when the internet was made with original IP addresses, I hope everybody knows what the original IP address is, the thought was, there's no way there could be 2 billion devices online, and now we have more than 4 billion devices online. And now it's a mixture of IP and IPv4 standard, where you need to have a truly random assignment to a device. So, you know, sometimes the best thing we can do is just turn it off. We don't need to feed this energy desire and energy need and this desire for constant surveillance, because, you know, for example, you were like working for an image recognition company or something, right? Or you work with the Ministry of Interior for like internal politics. When you go home, the machine still keeps working. It still keeps consuming energy. It still is lit up. The energy is still active in the power supplies and in the server rooms. What about just turning it off? Humans leave the building, we just turn it off and turn it on when we need it. It is sometimes that simple. Maybe we don't need like better, low power consuming processors, next gen power supplies. Why don't we just turn it off?
Just remember the pictures from the inauguration of Trump. Who was in the first row and who was behind him? That's just in addition to your example. And on the other hand, oder vielleicht spreche ich jetzt besser auf Deutsch weiter, das mit dem Ersetzen von Arbeitsplätzen funktioniert, glaube ich, tatsächlich eher global, als dass uns wirklich die Maschinen die Arbeit abnehmen. Es gab in der Landwirtschaft, und das liegt aber schon Jahrzehnte zurück, einen großartigen Innovationssprung, wo tatsächlich menschliche Arbeitskräfte durch Maschinen ersetzt wurden. Aber ob das für den Dienstleistungsbereich in irgendeiner Weise so zutrifft, ist, glaube ich, gerade sehr umstritten. Passiert tut Folgendes: Hofer lagert, also Aldi für unsere deutschen Zuhörerinnen, lagert seine Verwaltungseinheiten nach Indien aus. Das passiert. Also eine Verlagerung in einen Billiglohnbereich. Aber nicht, diese Arbeit verschwindet nicht. Die macht nicht plötzlich eine, wie auch immer geartete Artificial Intelligence oder irgendwer. Es machen Menschen. Meistens die Drecksarbeit machen Menschen.
So we have to close up. Robert, one last comment, short, okay? So, let's think we come together.
Du bist einfach really short, I will do it in German. Ganz kurz gefragt. Emma Goldman hat vor über 100 Jahren schon mal geschrieben, dass staatskapitalistische Strukturen auf dem Prinzip Quantität aufbauen. Also es geht um Massen, es geht um Gewicht, es geht um Einflussgröße und so weiter. Und dem korrespondieren ja auch die ganzen digitalen Strukturen. Ja, das beginnt, wie wir gehört haben, bei AI, Weights and Biases und so weiter. Das geht genauso bei Algorithmenprozessen, die auch nach Wahrscheinlichkeits- und statistischen Strukturen beschaffen sind, etc. etc. Jetzt ist meine Frage, Widerstandsbewegungen, anarchistische, sozialistische, andere Widerstandsbewegungen, ökologische Widerstandsbewegungen, versuchen auch alle Massenbewegungen zu werden. Ist das Teil des Problems?
So, is there someone who wants to answer it? Okay?
That was one of the second topics we were discussing in the platform is we must also first remember, so as again, I learned statistics as a really useful tool I could use, right? Like I did mathematics 3, I did operational theory and stuff like that. But what I did not know at the time, and when I started doing research and figuring kind of other stuff out, which is even longer, was that the first application of statistics was by British mathematicians to sort out their apartheid regimes in India. And we must also remember the tools of how this advancement was made and the absolute bloodshed that came before it. And one of the ways that we can combat this as a new emerging social movement or any movement is just refuse to be written down, refuse to be monitored, refuse to be identified, refuse to be selected and reselected and sorted or resorted, right? This is like one of them, like, why should I not just give up my privacy but refuse to be put in this social imaginary box where I cannot have any more mobility than this, or any social action or civil disobedience can be marked on my record? Why should we stand for this?
Yes, this is a very important question also at last. We are masses of human beings and masses of plants and masses of animals all over the earth, but we can communicate with each other through habits also without being known. Thank you so much for your patience with our techniques, with us. Have a good meal and enjoy the afternoon. Is there something important to say for the afternoon in the moment?
No, just we started. No, not 1:45.
We start at